Fourth album for the Americans Valdrin, who present their most epic album ever. It's probably not a good idea for extreme metal albums to be long, but Valdrin don't mind that this album is as long as the previous two combined. And the reality is that they're right to have the confidence to do so, because although it's a long journey, it bears a lot of fruit along the way. There's not a single song that sounds overdone, and it perfectly conveys what melodic black metal should be: heaviness, melody, and the ability to transport us to other worlds or eras. Ambitious, but with plenty of talent to match that ambition.
The cover doesn't do justice to the musical quality of Aslan. This second album by Mexicans Cabrakaän surprises anyone who doesn't know their music. It's not that it's original, after all, the mixture of extreme metal with symphonic and folk elements, and it's the symphonic ones that end up speaking loudest here, is something we already have plenty of, and even at a fairly high level of quality. The differentiating factor is that they sing in Spanish, focus on Mexican folklore in their lyrics and the mythology that precedes the Spanish conquests of the territory, and all these facts make for a very interesting final result. Far from being original, but quite unique, this is a band you should get to know.
The Portuguese band Travo are back, ready to revolutionize the world of those who think that mixtures and adventure without borders when it comes to composing and feeling, and above all, making feel, music can only add value. Traveling and with a fuzz tone in their psych rock, to which is added a certain stoner/doom spirit that makes us totally surrender to their mystical magic. We've said it many times and will say it until the end of time: the best music is that which is organic, not just in sound but especially in the way it sounds, how free it is and how it has its own meaning, as if it were a being with its own intelligence, with the ability to reason and feel. This is what Travo present here in a completely masterful way.
A debut album that brings together the symphonic and folk worlds, but in a very subtle and classy way. Unlike what we're used to in everything symphonic in the world of heavy and alternative music, the orchestral elements reinforce the melodies through orchestral arrangements and harmonies over the main melodies and are far from spoiling the ambience created, the atmosphere of fantasy worlds that belong to the imagination of every listener. This is an experience that would enrich images from a movie, but since there is no movie, it's really the images we have inside us that are invoked, whether we like it or not.
The third album by Canadians Hyperia, and according to urban myth, this is an album that promises to be special, the one that defines the direction of their career over the next few years. We have no way of knowing now if this will be the case, but it is an album that makes, or rather forces, thrash metal fans to pay attention. It's aggressive, with a death metal voice, but it also has a high dose of melody that will convert even those who are more traditional. There are 11 songs, including a cover of Heart's Crazy on You, to close the album, that bring what any thrash metal fan asks for. Or rather, any metal fan.
The old school label is very effective in the extreme music underground, but if there's one genre where it's particularly effective, it's death metal. However, there are so many bands using this label and the proposals are sometimes so uninteresting that you might even lose interest. It's not that Carnation used this label unkindly, but I'm talking about this because the fascination of their sound was that they started from an old school base without fear of modernizing or going into more melodic areas within death metal without being uncharacteristic. Which makes this album a huge addiction from start to finish, with a few curveballs that are quickly internalized. After the excellent Where Death Lies in 2020, their return couldn't be more exciting.
I won't bore you by once again starting a review by saying how boring modern prog metal has become by drinking too much from the wellspring of metalcore and gent, and how that has made it extremely boring. However, I have to say that it was precisely the same litany that came to mind when listening to this new super band Temic, made up of members and ex-members of bands such as Neil Morse, Shining, Devin Townsend, Maratone, Archetype and Haken, among others. That initial feeling is diluted by the content. In other words, what we have is form being overcome by content that manages to convert the most skeptical. Names like Leprous and Sown may spring to mind, but Temic have shown that they have a personality of their own and endless paths of progression, while managing to build an album with as much weight as emotionality, an album that we discover after a few listens is far more memorable than we gave it credit for.
Angra's new album is finally out. The Brazilian band hasn't been very prolific when it comes to releasing new music, which is natural when you've been playing for over 3 decades, and this is the third album since Fabio Leone took over as frontman 10 years ago. Unlike other bands with long careers, a new album isn't just an excuse to go on tour. Cycles of Pain is an album with meaning and depth, and with that unique ability to show the perfect balance between power metal and a progressive sensibility, in addition to the expected cultural richness that always exudes in their music. A great comeback, absolutely recommended.
It's always a nice surprise when a band comes out with an album that leaves you completely surrendered. That's the case with this Spanish band, whose Echoes of the Future is an exciting piece of work for anyone who likes a mixture of death metal and melody. And although this formula has specific rules that can deprive it of freshness or originality, this is not an issue that is in evidence here. This being their third album, the band is no longer new to the art of melodic death metal, but they still retain that freshness I was talking about earlier, which, combined with the concept, makes the impact of their music much greater. Without any filler, this is one of the melodic death metal vices of the year.
An impressive debut album from this British quartet. We like debut albums that surprise, and we like it precisely when they dare to have the courage, right from the start, not to worry about the potential reception of their music. The courage to have an album with only 3 songs, the first of which, the title track, is over 20 minutes long. 3 long songs and far from being a boring work. The curse is gripping from start to finish, and any fan of doom metal or even progressive metal will find it easy to get completely hooked from the first note to the last.